Hello, and welcome to Outmouse Labs. My name's Penny, and I'm glad you're here. Today we're going to be doing something a bit different. We are going to be coding something in Ruby using the DragonRuby Game Toolkit. Now, this is a commercial game engine which you can get on itch. Right now, a standard license is $32, although there are often sales, and the creator often makes it available even for free to folks who are maybe students or educators, or even for game jams. So keep an eye out, and I think you could definitely snag a license for free. I got mine through the Bundle for Racial Justice several years ago. Okay, so what is DragonRuby? DragonRuby is a pretty easy to use, beginner friendly 2D game engine using the Ruby programming language. And today I'm going to be walking you through making a simple sort of target shooter style game. You'll be using your mouse, you will click on targets as they appear and get a score over 10 seconds. Okay, so let's get started. Alright, so if you want to pick up DragonRuby, you can do so here. The docs are found at docs.dragonruby.org. And the docs are a little bit hard to navigate. You will definitely want to be using your Control F finder, and I'll be walking you through some of that as well. Next up, on the itch page in the description, they have what's kind of a cheat sheet for basics that you're going to use over and over again. So I usually keep this open as well. Finally, there was a book written by Brett Chalupa, which he makes available for free both on the web here at book.dragonwriters.community, and also you can download it on itch as a PDF. I do highly recommend it. It is how I learned the basics, and it's a really great work and a huge inspiration to me and to the community at large, I would assume. All right. Couple other things. We are going to be using Jfxr to create our simple sound effects. This is at frozenfractal.com. So jfxr.frozenfractal.com, and this creates simple retro style sound effects at the push of a button, and you can edit them. I did use 1-Bit Dragon to create the music. This is a commercial product. It's around $35 at base. Again, there may be sales at times. You can buy this on itch or on Steam, and it's certainly optional. You can find all kinds of free audio assets out there. Last but not least, I used Convertio, which is an online option to convert files, specifically to convert my WAV file for music to an OGG file, because OGGs are seamless looping in most engines, including DragonRuby. And for those of you who are coming from RPG Maker, it also does seamless looping in RPG Maker as well. Okay, now that we have kind of a tour of what programs we're going to be using, let's move into the code. Alright, so when you open up DragonRuby, this is sort of the hello world, if you will. So we have a global variable. You know it's global because of the $sign in front. It's FPS, which is frames per second. It's set for 60. This is technically optional. DragonRuby always runs at 60 frames per second, but this allows you to do math without having a random divided by 60 somewhere and not knowing necessarily where that 60 is coming from. And we have def tick args. This is the game loop for DragonRuby, so there will always be a def tick args, and in Ruby, functions end with an end keyword. So this is our game loop. It'll be present in every DragonRuby project. args.outputs.labels is within args. There is an outputs, and then there is labels, which is text. And then we have what's called a hash in Ruby. In other languages, this might be called a dictionary, or it might be called a table. I come from Lewis, so I'm used to calling them in a table. But in Ruby, it's called a hash. And it's fairly self-explanatory. Where is the X value on the screen we want it? And we're saying we want it to be args.grid.w, which means it means the width of the screen divided by 2, so in the middle. Our y is args.grid.h, which means the height of the screen divided by 2, so once again the middle. Our text has to be in single or double quotes. It must be in double quotes if you're going to use string interpolation, which we may be using a little bit later, and I'll show you that. And then whatever we want to say. Size enum, 0 is the base text size. So if you go negative, it gets smaller, positive, it gets larger. I asked on the Discord and was told that it tops out somewhere around 200. You'll see in a minute that 40 is pretty big enough in most cases for something like a title. Then the font. So in our My Game, which I'm going to show you this file structure in just a minute, we have a fonts folder where I put adventurer.ttf. I just tell the font that's what I want to use and where it's at. again in quotes because it's a string. And then alignment enum, 0 is left, 1 is center, 2 is right. I think there are additional pieces, but that's the basics. So we're saying we want the text to be centered. And then that's it right now. This line at the bottom, you can tell is another global variable because of the $sign. GDK stands for Game Toolkit, and it's a container that has a bunch of special commands for DragonRuby. In this case, we're using .reset to tell DragonRuby every time we reset the game or reload the game and save, we want all the variables to reset. Otherwise, it'll remember any variables that we put in the state blob. And I'll go into that in just a bit. Before we kind of pause this video and move into the next one, I want to go ahead and show you what we have. So this code creates this window. It's 1280 by 720. There's our text in the middle, rendered in the font we selected. Very simple. In DragonRuby, it's always 1280 by 720, so you can always depend on that math. I still use args.grid.w and args.grid.h because, again, I don't want a random 1280 or 720 lying around that I'm not necessarily sure where it came from. It's good practice to replace raw numbers with variables when you can. Also, it's easier if you have to update that variable later. You don't have to write it over and over again. All right, so the last thing I'll do for our beginning is I'm going to show you the file structure for a DragonRuby project. So in a DragonRuby project, you will have a folder. This is a base one. So when you buy it, you get a zip. The zip has this folder in it. Looks like this. When you want to create a game, you make a copy of this folder and rename it. So I renamed ours Shooting Gallery. In Shooting Gallery, you have DragonRuby.exe. That's this window, which once you start it, it'll hot reload when you save, which is a wonderful feature. You have Publish.exe, which will create builds for your game, which we'll be doing in quite some time. And then in the My Game folder, you have your source code, so your main RB, which is this file that we're updating. You also have places to put things like fonts, sounds, and sprites. And we'll be looking at each of those in further videos. I am going to probably film this entire series at once, but I'm going to break it up so that it's a little bit easier to follow. So that is it for video 1. We'll keep going in video 2 in just a few minutes. Thank you.